So let's learn how to work with Visual Studio to create a model, view, and a controller, and we'll just have some fun with this. So let's do a File, New, and we want to make a new project. And in this case, when we come in to make that new project, we want to tell it that we want to make an ASP.NET web application .NET framework, and go ahead and give it a name. And I'm going to call mine Struct Fun, because we're going to work with some models which are like structures. And we make sure that we go ahead and choose the .NET Framework 4.6.1. If that's not the one you want, you could go click on that arrow and choose the one that you have installed that you want to work with. This will create a directory in our source repos folder under your username. And we click OK. And then it says what type of application do you want to make. We want to make an MVC application, but we want it to be empty. We could do web forms someday, but we don't like it as much. MVC, but that'll create a whole bunch of stuff for us. We could do web APIs and do some RESTful stuff. We could change the authentication, but we want it to say no authentication right now because we're doing empty. So click OK, and it's going to go generate the structure we need to do an MVC application. But it's not going to really put anything in there. We're going to be responsible for adding the necessary code to make our project work. So let's go ahead and close this window. We don't need that open. And then we come over here and we look at our structure, and notice we have a folder for models, a folder for controllers, and a folder for views. And currently in views we don't have anything. We have our app start folder, and when we look at that, this is the one that contains our routes, which says when you run your application, your website, and if you run it especially from a controller window rather than a view, it's going to try to find a home controller folder, which we don't have right now, and a method called index inside of that home controller. So we don't have a home controller yet, and we don't have a home controller view. But this says this is the default road or route when you run your application. So let's come over here and create a website. Now the first thing we want to do is I want to be able to store data, and the way I store data is through a model. So I right mouse click on model and I choose add. Now models are just classes, so I choose class down below and then I give it a name of what I want to store. Now I know I want to store some data about soccer teams, and I'm going to have a team class, and then I'm going to have a soccer team class which inherits from team. So let's start with the parent class. We'll call it team.cs right there, and then click add. Then I can come into this class and type in whatever attributes or properties I want the class to have. And the first thing that I want this class to have, attribute wise, is I want it to have a team name. And so we're going to give it the scope of public, and we're going to specify the data type, which is string, and then we're going to specify the attribute name, which is team name, and we'll use camel case. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to write getters and setters. Well, the easy way to do that in C# is we just simply say curly brace get semicolon set semicolon. And that now says if I ever go and do a team name equals something, it will automatically call the set. And if I do a retrieval of the team name, it will call a get. And so the code for both of those would really look probably something like this. Private string, and this would be team name, and this would be team name, and let me comment this out. And so this would simply say if you ever wanted to go and access team name, and somewhere in some program, and I'm just going to type code, this isn't legal, but let's say we had an object called oteam, and we said oteam.teamName is equal to RSL, semicolon. Then this RSL would automatically go into a reserved word called value, which would be assigned to the attribute. If I ever tried to access the team name, Like maybe I wanted to print it out or do something with it. I could even console.writeLine it. And remember, this isn't valid code in this class, but I'm just showing. This would say go to the object, go to the attribute, grab its team name, and return the value. So that's what a getter and setter is doing for us. And by us just doing a get set like this, that means we really don't have to write any other code, and we like that. So we have one attribute for team name, and then we're going to have another attribute, and it will be an int, and it will be called team points, and then we'll write the get and the set for that attribute also. And so now we have the get and the set for that attribute. We have two attributes, specified their scope, their data type. The team class is ready to go. I'm going to save that. I'm going to come to models and create a brand new one. Right mouse click, add class, and this time I'm going to create the soccer team. So I'll call it soccer team.cs. And the first thing that I want to do with this soccer team is I want to inherit from the team class. So I do colon team. I now get everything the team class wants to pass on. And I can go ahead and add some other attributes. So let's add one that says public int draw, and we'll put our get and our set. And we'll add another attribute, public int goals for, with our get and our set, and another one, public int goals against, with a get and a set, and public int differential with a get and a set, and the last attribute we'll add will be public int points and a get and a set. And right now we're just making everything public. The other thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and write a constructor. I want to write a default constructor, which C# puts one in for you, but we're going to overload it. So once you start to write constructors, C# says, great, I'm not going to do anything for you again. So I'm going to write a constructor by specifying the scope, the class name, and that now becomes a default constructor. So that allows me to create a soccer team without doing anything else. I want to write another constructor. So public soccer team, but in this case I want to receive two attributes. We'll call it string sname and int I points. I like to use Hungarian notation. And then what we're going to do on this one is we're going to go ahead and say base, because it's our parent, and base team name attribute is equal to sname, and base dot team points is equal to I points. And so that loads up our parent attributes, which are really part of our class. And so now we have a soccer team class that inherits from team with two constructors and extra attributes. Let's go ahead and save that. And now we have our models in place for us to store data. So the next thing I want to do now is I want to create a constructor. So let's go, a controller. So let's go to the controllers, right mouse click, and choose add controller. And we want an empty controller. Click add. And it says, what do you want to call it? Now when I first started with C# and ASP.NET, I wanted to wipe out that word controller. Leave it there. We're going to go ahead and type in the word index. We could do home. I just want to show you something though. Index controller. Click add. And this will go out and make a brand new class for us. And it's going to be a controller class. And it says, by the way, we're going to go ahead and make that controller, and we're going to add a brand new method for you. And it's going to return a view someday. We call it action result, and there's our view, return the view. And the method is called index. And when we actually go and run this method, it's going to try to find a view with the same name as this method in a folder called index. And we'll see that just a little bit later. Now what I want to do in this method is I want to go ahead and load up my models. So the first thing I need to do is, if I just start typing a variable trying to work with that model, and I say I want to create a list of soccer teams, right? That's the name of our class, list soccer team, and we'll call it LST or LIST, lowercase, and we'll say soccer team equals new list soccer team, and then we'll say parentheses to call a constructor, and that makes a brand new list. And it says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know who soccer team is. So you click on the red arrow and you either choose this little light bulb and you say bring in the models, because we need to have access to the models over here in order to use the class here. That now makes a brand new soccer team list. Next thing we could do is we could go ahead and create a variable int I team rank. We're going to assign it the value of 0. And what we're going to do in this program is we're going to load up a bunch of soccer teams, and then we're going to sort the data, and based upon the sorted data we're going to show how they rank. So let's create another list of soccer team, and it will be our list sorted equals new list of soccer teams, parentheses. So this one will contain our sorted list when we're done. We come into here and now we just want to load up the data. So we'll say load data, and the way we load the data is we say list soccer teams dot add, and we want to add some data. Now what do we want to add? We want to add a brand new soccer team object, and I could just say parentheses, and that would work. But I want to go ahead and give it the data too. And remember, back over here in the soccer team we had two attributes, one for team name and one for the points. So let's pass it two parameters. We'll pass it RSL, and we'll pass it an int value of points. And then let's repeat this. We'll just do it maybe 3 times. So I'm just going to copy and paste to try to speed things up a little bit. We'll do 4 of them. And we'll say we have RSL, we have Colorado, and they have, we'll say 24 points, and we'll have FC Dallas, and they have 42 points, and then we'll go ahead and go with San Jose, and we'll say they have 16 points. I now have a list of soccer team objects with data loaded up. Now I want to go ahead and sort the data. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say my brand new list that I made up there that's empty is going to be equal to our current soccer list that has all the data, and we want to call a method to sort it. And we want to sort that data in descending order. So we say descending order, and then we have to pass it what we call a lambda expression. And that simply says, give me some value for a parameter. We'll call it X. We could call it anything. How about O team? O team, and then we say equal greater than, and we want to look at each object from that list that we're going to call O team, and we're going to compare the points attribute. And that will now sort all the data in descending order by the data we're working with. Now we're still getting an error because it's saying, wait a minute, you're trying to assign this result to a list, and I don't really know what this result returns. So we have to come in here and say dot to list and specify that we're turning the results into a list and storing it to that new list. So that will now sort all the data, descending order, based upon the points, turn it into a list, and put it back into that list variable we created. Now that we have all the data, let's go ahead and print it out. I'm going to show you how to use what they call the view bag. The view bag is what we call a data dictionary, and in a view bag you have a key and a value. The key represents where do you look. The value represents what is the data. So we're just going to specify that we have some data and we want to put it in that key value. So let's do the following. Let's just come into here and we'll say for each item in the soccer team list, which if we say in list sorted, and then we have to specify what item's coming out of that. Well, a soccer team object is coming out of that, and we want to call it O-team. You could call it anything you want. So we're saying for each item in the soccer team list, we want to do something. I'm going to wipe out that view bag list, and we're going to come over here, and we're going to say, go to the view bag, and let's go ahead and put a team name. We'll call it team names. And you can call it anything you want. That's the key for the area in the view bag. And the view bag is just a structure that holds information. And we want to go ahead and put in the team name. And let's concatenate on a hyphen. And let's go ahead and also print out the O-team dot points. So this will just make a big list of information inside that view bag. And then we want that view bag to be returned to the view so we can work with it. Well, one other thing we need to do then is we just need to come back over to here and say, well, here's a view, but we don't have a view created yet. And we're not going to use this team rank. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter, so I'm going to comment that out for now. Well, actually we could. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's use that team rank. Let's say that, let's concatenate on the team rank concatenated with the space concatenated with the team name. And we could even concatenate on a pound sign, and it shows a number. I'll put a period there too. We'll see how that looks when we go to print it out. So we said take a pound sign string concatenated with our team rank, and we need to go ahead and increment that. So we'll do a pre-increment. So it's going to change it to 1 before it prints anything. And then we do a period, the team name, a dash, and the points. So by the time we're done, we should have a big list that's sorted with team name, points, and the rank. Now we need a view. Here's the easiest way to make a view. Right mouse click inside of this method you're working with and choose Add View. And it will actually grab the method name which you want to use. Uncheck this Use Layout page for right now and click Add. And it's going to go create a brand new view for us. Here's our view, and it gives us some information, and here's our body and our div. And then we want to go ahead and display that information from the view bag. Well, how do we do that? Real simple. All we have to do is come over here and put an @ sign in front of it and say go grab the view bag, and then we need to grab whatever the name was. Back over here we said the name was called team names. So we say team names. We save that and go back to the index controller. The index controller. And you'll notice that we have our view bag set up. We're working with the view. Go back to the view, index, and click run. The little green arrow. Yours might say Chrome, it might say Edge. That's your default controller. So let's go ahead and run it. It builds it, and it's going to display it. So let's take the result. Look at the result. # San Jose 0. That doesn't make any sense to me. Where's all my other data? Easy. Go ahead and close that window and come back to your controller. Notice that we just kept saying view bag team names equal. We didn't concatenate on to what was already there. So we wanted a plus equal so that we keep a running list. Otherwise it keeps wiping out what was ever there. Go back to your view, save it, run it one more time, and now let's see what it looks like. And the problem is that now when we look at our data that it's displaying, it's all on one line and it's all jammed together. Doesn't look very pretty, does it? So somehow we need to make that look better. So maybe what we could do is come back to our controller, and we could actually add some HTML, like add a break. And why would we do that? Because the view really is HTML. Come back over to here, and now what we want to do is we want to turn this string in the view bag into HTML. So here's how you do it. You say @HTML dot raw parenthesis string parenthesis. So we're casting something. You need double parenthesis right here. Sorry. So we're going to cast this view bag dot team names as a string, and then we're going to turn it into HTML and display it on the view. Save it, run it, and let's see if it now displays the strings separated with the break so that we see the data on multiple lines. So we could actually go and build our own HTML. Now we do have a semicolon there, so we probably have an error. And if we came back, oh, that's because we put a semicolon right there. So don't put the semicolon there because it doesn't understand that in HTML. So this is a way that you could actually go and build your own dynamic HTML, put it in a view bag, and then display it in a view. Try one more thing. Click on the controller and try to run it one more time and see what happens. We saw that it worked, right? Now when we run it though, it says, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if we came up here and we type /index, that says go find an index controller, go find the index action method in that controller and run it. And now it works. Because by default, that route was trying to find a home controller with index. You didn't see it show up, but that's what it's trying to do. And why is it doing that? Because in your route config, it says if you just try to run the web page, not the view, but the controller, if you try to run the controller and there's nothing there, it's just a default, then we're going to go try to find a home controller, which we don't have. Ours is called index, and a method inside that home controller called index. So you got to make sure you're using the right routes, and we'll learn more about that later on in the semester.